Dear colleagues, the poor replication validity of biomedical studies is often attributed to fraud or to other kinds of misconduct. But in our team, we explored in another direction, the uncertainty inherent to initial studies. Let's examine an example. The topic here is the level of a dopamine transporter in the brain of a patient suffering from attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. The first study on this topic was published in 1999, and it reported a major effect, a 70% increase in the dopamine transporter level. However, the subsequent studies either reported no effect or a smaller effect, or even effects in the opposite direction. And finally, the meta-analysis published in 2010 reported that the dopamine transporter level was not altered in ADHD patients. Notice here the largest study, the study with the largest number of patients, which reported a small but significant effect in the opposite direction. Then you can see here, typical example of an initial study which has been fully disconfirmed by subsequent studies. But is it common? What is the percentage of initial studies which have been disconfirmed or strongly attenuated by subsequent studies? In order to answer this question, we built a large database of 663 meta-analyses related to associations between biomarkers or risk factors and 12 pathologies. And in this figure, we plotted the effect size reported by the initial studies in function of the effect size reported by the corresponding meta-analysis. These 12 dots correspond to the average for each pathology, and you can see that the dots are all above the dashed line, which correspond to equality. In other words, almost all initial studies reported an inflated effect size compared to the corresponding meta-analysis. In contrast, the largest studies were in much more agreement with the meta-analysis. If we concentrate on the 359 initial studies that reported a significant effect, 56% were either disconfirmed or strongly attenuated by the corresponding meta-analysis. But this replication rate strongly varies depending on the biomedical domain. This is explained here. Our database correspond to, here, the blue spot to genetic studies related to 4 neurological diseases, the green one to 4 genetic studies related to 4 somatic diseases, and the red one, genetic studies in psychiatry, 4 psychiatric disorders. And you can see there that the studies related to genetic risk factors and psychiatric disorders, the replication rate was much, much lower compared to the other domains. And why? The size of the dot corresponds to the sample size. Therefore, here, on average, the genetic studies related to psychiatric disorders were performed with a sample size which was only a third of that with neurological studies. And second, the effect size. Here we concentrated on the 232 initial studies that reported a significant effect and paired with a robust meta-analysis. And therefore, these effect size corresponds to our best estimate of the true effect size. And you can see there that the effect size related to genetic studies in psychiatry is much smaller. In other words, initial studies related to genetic studies in psychiatry failed to have a very low replication rate because their sample size was too small to detect the small but real but few effect size in this field. On the opposite side, you can see there the behavioral studies related to psychiatry with a very high replication rate, but these studies are very often tautological. For example, an impulsivity test related to ADHD. And they are no more considered in the remaining part of my talk. Another point that we investigated was the relationship with the impact factor of the journals that publish these initial studies, and we found actually no relationship at all. This means that initial studies published in prestigious journals are no more reliable than the average. And the last point that we investigated was the relationship with the publication year. Our initial studies were here in this part of the figure, we concentrated on the 296 initial biological studies reporting a significant effect between 1980 and 2009. And you can see there that the replication rate was quite stable. The difference between the first decade and the next are not significant. In other words, to our surprise, the replication rate was quite stable during 3 decades. And why? And this has been published. But more recently, we further analyzed our data, and this is not yet published. We observed that the sample size actually was increased in the recent years. And therefore, we should expect a better replication rate with a larger sample size. But it's not, because we have the opposite trend concerning the effect size. And therefore, the increase in the sample size only counterbalanced the decrease in the effect size. Both trends are especially obvious regarding genetic studies and epidemiological studies in all these domains. In conclusion, initial association studies are often disconfirmed by subsequent studies on the same topic. And this is especially a concern regarding some domains, such as genetic studies in psychiatry. Therefore, there is room for improvement, at least in some biomedical domains. However, in our opinion, it would be counterproductive to demand a much higher replication rate in for all initial studies in all biomedical domains, either by further increasing the sample size, it has been already done actually, and or by bureaucratic controls. All these measures have an economic cost that might impair innovative research. Finally, I wonder whether we have a real reproducibility crisis. We observe no change in the replication rate during the last 3 decades. Our concern is rather related to the trend in smaller and smaller effect size reported by initial studies. Even if these small effect size are real and confirmed by subsequent studies, we might question their medical relevance. We might question their social impact as an unjustified source of anxiety for the public when they are echoed by the media. And finally, I would like to acknowledge my co-workers, which are listed here, and I would like to say some special thanks to John Ioannidis for an helpful discussion at the beginning of this work. And I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Francois, for an intriguing talk. It reminded me also of some work by Ioannidis. Are there any questions? Please use the microphone.
Well, I'll just use this one because it's easy enough. I'm William Gunn, currently at Elsevier, but I helped start the reproducibility project that Nicole just spoke about. And since then, at Elsevier, we've been talking a little bit about having a layer of replication studies done as part of the training program. And I wonder what if you think that the cost of doing replications may be too high to justify, doing them at least across the board, which I don't necessarily think there's evidence one way or the other for yet, but if you think that's the case, what would you think about rolling that into the work that's already done as part of the, let's say, the PhD training program?
In the previous talk, I like very much your suggestion. We have to realize that we need preliminary studies which are performed with a small number of observations which are preliminary, and this is, we have to accept this. And on the other hand, we need replication studies with a much stronger level of data, with a larger number of observations. But in my opinion, in its essence, science is uncertain. And we have to say this to the general public.